E ngā huia kai manawa o te iwi tēnā koutou katoa.
Whakapiri mai anō rā ki tā tātou hotaka whakahirahira. Welcome to Marae Investigates. Summer season over the next 11 weeks we'll be looking back at a range of stories.
And we'll be chatting with the reporters who brought them to you.
Today we're talking issues of the year, and with the 2014 election year, who can ignore the push from Mana and Māori Party Alliance? Reporting Ahuia Wade spoke with Honi Harawira in October.
Ko koe ki o whakaaro, ko koe te tangata I whakae ki te noho ki tēnei tūru, ki runga I a Marae Investigates, ki o whakaaro pēhea nei te hanga o tētahi mana, rōpū mana Māori.
Hari te mea ko hau te rangatira kao. Engari kia honotahi aua whakaaro, hakoa wā māua nei rere kētanga, mōhia nau, e arohana rata ki tō tātou iwi, ko hau no ki tērā, ko te rōpū mana tērā. Nō reira, me honotahi, me tūkotahi, kia kite ai te katoa te ao, ko tahi ana ki te reo mana Māori motuhake, ke roto I te wharepare mata. Tērā taku rongo I ngā kōrero kei rungi ngā tiriti katoa te motu.
Engari, pēhea te hanga o te rōpū, me ki ko wai te rangatira?
Kei ngā iwi tērā, ngā me mō te rōpū mana, ngā me mō te rōpū Māori, hara I te mea e tohu ana kia tua hau, hei rangatira mō tērā o ngā pāti o mana Māori. Waiho mā te iwi hei kōrero. Engari tuatu, hea ona kaupapa, tērā te mea nui. Tāku, kia tāki atu ki te hunga whairawa, kia hāngai wā tātou tamariki, kia hangai ngā whare, kia whai mahi mo te katoa o tō tātou ao Māori, kia tūranga tirai tō tātou tiriti o Waitangi. Tū te ao, tū te pō.
Tērā pēr, ko e rā kaupapa, ko e rā etahi kaupapa a te rōpū Māori, ne?
Wena te kōrero a te rōpū Māori, engari tā rātou honongo atu kia nāhinara, ko kitea, e kore rātou e tino ū ana ki wena kaupapa. I te mea ko patu a nāhinara I wā tātou iwi, ko tūkino I wā tātou tamariki, ko tāhai e ngā iti pūtea mai wā tātou whānau I te pani me te rawa kore. Tō leira hakoa te kōrero e piritahi ana rātou ki te hoariri o te iwi Māori. Ko nāhinara tērā.
Nā runga rā anō I tērā, ka tāia ngā rōpū e rua te piri, te noho tahi ki te kōrero.
Aira, I te mea ki tōku nei titiro, nui atu te wawata o te kotahitanga I te hihia a hone, a te ururu, a wairane. Me hanga I te wawata o te kotahitanga, he whakaaro nui mo mātou katoa. Me nako whakae, tarawaki te wā ka kitea I te mana Māori motuhake. Me ne kore whakae, mā rātou tērā.
Pēnā I konei I te rānei, a te ururoa, e haha tō kōrero ki aia? Me ne
whakai ana koe ki a kōrero, me waka takoto mātou I wā mātou tikanga, tā te pāti Māori, te rōpū mana. Kia kitea, kei hea te hononga, kei hea te rere kētanga. Tū atu, me karangatu pēr ki tētahi atu, hei waka haere ngā kōrero nei. I te timatanga o mana, I inoi atua kia Willie Jackson, kia haere te kōrero ki te pāti Māori, kia kite me ne whakai ana kia honotai. E mea nā rātou kia wili putatu. So, hako ko wai te tangata, kei rere tonu taku hihia.
Engari kai roto I a koe ne, kai te hiehia katoa koe ki te kōrero ki aia?
Hore kauheraru ki te kōrero. I te mea, ko te kaupapa te mea nui, hara I te mea te rere kētanga o hone me taururo. Engari ko te kaupapa o te kotahitanga, tērā te mea nui. Tū te ao, tū te pō.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Harawira.
Kia ora rā. Nā, kei konei a ngā huia wei. Ngā huia, te hononga I Wainganui te rōpū toranga pū Māori me te rōpū mana. Nā te aha I hua ake ai tērā whakaaro.
Ai, I hua ai nā ua kōrero whai muri mai I te Digipol a te karere, a ko tā ngā kaitautoko I ngā rōpū e rua me hono tahi, me kōrero tahi ngā rōpū haioranga tōranga pū a te tau e tū mai nei. Me te whakaaro, me hanga I tētahi piriti, I tai mai a hone harawira, engari kāre a te ururoa I te hiahia kōrero, engari mea rawa ake ka tīmata nā kōrero I Wainganui ngā rōpū, o tira I Wainganui ngā prehitini o ia rōpū. Ara ko Annette Sykes tērā o mana, araua ko Neira Pau o te Pāti Māori, engari ko Waika Mōhio hea hakaitu atu.
Nō reira, kore rawa e nei rōpū e hono?
Ko tāku ki te kore ngā rōpū e rua e waihanga I tētahi kirimana I wainga I a rātau, ka puta te ihu o reipa I roto I ngā rohe pōti Māori, ko te raru nui ki au, kare kau a te ururo I te hiahia ki te kōrero ki a hone harawira. Kai te tūtonu ngā pihi o te ururoa ki a hone harawira, kare au te mōhio hea hai, he raru nui kai wainga I a rāua, tērā pia e kore e tāia te whakatika I whiua e au te pātai kia te ururoa, a ko tāna me whakatika ia I te marae o te Pāti Māori I te tuatahi I mua I tōna whakatika I a hone me tōna rōpū.
Tika pēr tēnā kōrero ana me ata whakapai I tōna marae mui te whakapai. Nō reira, ki te kore e nei rōpū e rua e mahi tahi kāha.
Ko te āhua nei ka heke te Pāti Māori ki tētahi rōpū ko tahi tangata takitahi anake, engari ko te mate ke kārehe hua, kārehe take o te rōpū ko tahi tangata anake, titiro ki a Peter Dunn, John Banks, Brendan Horan, ko tāku mena ka āta whakaaro a mana me te Pāti Māori ki tētahi mahere hei aukati I te rōpū reipa, ka taia. Engari me mahi tahi, me kōrero tahi te tuatahi, kia kore ai e uru te rōpū reipa. I ki te tātau I tērā āhuatanga I Ikaroa rāwhiti, kāre I hono tahi ngā kaipōti āmana me te Pāti Māori, ki te aukati I a reipa. Nā reira, hei te mutunga, I toa a me ka whaitiri.
Well, ko koe te matakite o Marae Investigates, me whakarongo te motu ki te matakite. Tēnā koe I ena whakamārama, I ena whakamahu ki au. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe hoa.
So in the same month, we received High Court documents relating to the Kohanga Reo Trust and its subsidiary, Te Pātaka Ohanga Limited. Documents revealing questionable spending and a lack of policy and procedure. Scotty spoke exclusively to Trust Board members Tony Waho and Drewis Barrett.
With me now are Te Kohanga Reo National Trust Board members Tony Waho and Drewis Barrett. Tēnei te mihi kia kōrua. Now, Tony, I'd just like to start with you. Tell us about Te Pātaka Ohanga. Why was it established and where does its funding come from?
It receives no government funding. In the 1990s, the Ministry of Education issued funding for early childhood property to the early childhood sector as a grant or a loan. And the National Trust Board at that time administered the building funds as a loan for kohanga under that policy. And for a nominal interest for the loan, kohanga whānau around the country agreed to circulate that pūtea to gain access to more property for more kohanga to be able to be established. And so the excess funds that were raised were passed over to Te Pātaka Ohanga to look after, to support kohanga.
Okay, so Te Pātaka Ohanga is at the centre of all the controversy, Drewis, because there's accusations of inappropriate usage of credit cards. Now, we've got designer clothing purchases, cash advances, personal travel and accommodation, koha transactions made by the general manager. How can all this be justified when we all know that so many kohanga reo out there are struggling financially?
No, it can't be justified, Scotty, because we have an investigation in place at the moment, and until that investigation is concluded, then we'll action what we have to do from the investigation.
So you agree that there has been some misappropriation happening here?
We are not certain yet until we get through with the investigation.
Once the investigation happens, if there has been some misappropriation of inappropriate usage of credit cards, will heads roll?
Again, I'd have to say that we'd have to wait for those investigations to come through, and Te Pātaka Ohanga will action whatever the findings are of that.
Okay, let me put this question to you. We've learned that the GM, Linda Tawhiwhirangi, has a dishonesty conviction, has served custodial sentence. So why on earth was she appointed as the General Manager of Te Pātaka Ohanga in the first place?
Scotty, I'd like to say to you it's really unfair that you go back 40 years. The General Manager of Te Pātaka Ohanga has worked for Te Pātaka Ohanga for 16 years, and 3 of those years she's been made General Manager. So there's a bit of unfairness to actually go back on the conviction when it happened 40 years ago.
Tony, me pēnei pēr te pātai ki a koe. Hea tō kōrero ki ngā kohanga reo o te motu. Ka riri, ka pāma mai i tēnei mahi a kūtau. I te mea, kei waho rā rātau, e tangi ana. Kei waho rā rātau, e pakaru ana o rātau matapihi, roto i o rātau kohanga. Ka area rātau pūtea, hei hoko rauemi. Engari, te kaumārima miliona tāra, kei roto i te tahua pūtea te kohanga reo trust. There's $15 million sitting in the trust, and yet kohanga reo out there are struggling. They can't fix their windows, they can't get resources. How do you respond to those kohanga reo?
Kei te puku mahi te pāri matua, kia tautoko ia ngā kohanga reo putanoi te motu. I ia tau, ka tau mai kia mātou, neki atu i te whitutakau miliona tāra. Ka tai mai ki mātou, ka tukuna hāngai te atu ki ngā kohanga reo. Ko ngā muni, ka riro ia mātou, mā te kohanga reo, ka tai ki te kohanga reo. Nā, ko te tirohia wā mātou whakapaunga pūte e roto i ngā tau, KPMG, ko te hunga tiro ki ngā pūtea, ko tika a mātou whakahaere pūtea. Mo te kaumārima miliona tāra, ko herea katoa tērā. Ko te nuinga o tērā, he pūtea hei hanga ware. Ka whiwhi mātou ki tērā, ka pupurihia, mō te wākahanga e te whare, ka whakawhitia te pūtea ki reira. Ai, he pūtea tāhua, kei te tukuna e mātou mā te Pātaka Ohanga e tiaki. Nā, ko nā muni nei, e korohia nei mō ngā kāri, iti iho i te tekau mano tāra tērā. Nā, kia tirohia...
Hako te iti,
hako te iti, kei ana kia oti i ngā kai tohu nei, te āta rapu i pēhetia ka aroa, a tauawa. Engari, i roto i ngā tau toru te kau, neke atu i te kotahi piriona tāra, kua whakahaeringia.
Engari, kei te auwe toru ngā kohanga.
And that was the kohanga.
Kohanga are still saying, even though
we
that
totally, we
explanation...
know that, and that is why we went for the claim. You know, the Ministry of Education said to the Waitangi Tribunal proudly, kohanga has received $1 billion over 30 years, and that is absolutely fantastic.
Doesn't
but
appear to be filtering down to the kohanga.
it absolutely is filtering down to the kohanga. The problem,
Then why are they still
Scotty, because they are
complaining about
underfunded.
broken windows and no resources?
Kohanga reo are the lowest funded of any early childhood service in the country. It's outrageous. Now, the Waitangi Tribunal agreed with us, and we are moving forward. These distractions, which have to be addressed, they are annoying, but they have to be addressed, and we are addressing them.
You said
we move
earlier,
forward to settle a claim to improve our future. It is an exciting future, and that's where we want to focus.
I ki mai koe, te kau mano tāra noiho te uara o ngā rawa ke tanga pūtea nei.
How do you get noiho?
There's only about $10,000 worth of misappropriation going on.
It would appear.
About that.
If it is indeed misappropriation.
That's what you said. So what are you doing, Druis, as part of Te Pātaka Ohanga? What are you doing? What are some of the systems you're putting in place to ensure that this kind of problem doesn't happen again?
Well, when the investigation is concluded, we would actually put in place what the policies and procedures that Te Pātaka Ohanga needs to do. And when that's finished, that's what the organisation will do. I think it's unfair, Scotty, also to say the kohanga are crying out there for this and that. Some kohanga are. Most of our kohanga are well.
But you'll be responsible for all the kohanga, though,
Yes,
aren't you?
we are.
Even those that are struggling.
Well, some of them are struggling, but the other thing is that if they are struggling, apply to Pātaka Ohanga to help them get through whatever they're going through.
How do you justify lifelong membership on Te Kohanga Reo National Trust? There's 7 members that are lifelong members. You've got Timoti Kāretu, Wharehuia Mūwara, Iritani Tāwhiwhirangi. How can they be lifelong members of the trust when they weren't voted on as lifelong members?
Well, they were... The Trust is a charitable organisation that set itself up. Originally, in 1983, the first iteration of the board had representatives of the major national Māori organisations. And over time, as I understand it, it became very difficult as the presidents or chairs of national organisations changed. There was an instability in the board. How it's been explained to me, ko au tētahi o ngā tamariki, hā kua neke atu I te rima te kau aku tau, I te ka noho au I te taha o ngā tino kaumātua te ao Māori, ka rite anō ki te marae. I o tātou marae, I mua I ngā ture o ngā tatanei, I ngā tau waru te kau I te wai wakature ai te Paeri Matua, he rite anō ki te marae. Ka pupuri hea e ngā kaitiaki, te whenua, mō te whānau, mō te hapu, mō te iwi, mō ake tonu, mate rāno. Now, so we've taken the model, they took the model.
About 30 seconds to wrap this up, Dean.
And we are reviewing, we've been on the road and we've been consulting our whānau because change is afoot. The settlement of the claim is moving us into a new structure. We have a whole study and consultation going on to look at improving our performance.
E mihi ana kia kōrua, mo tō kōrua kaha, ki te taia tinana mai ki mui te aroaro o te motu, ki te whakatakoto mai I a kōrua, whakautu mea kōrua whakaaro ki tēnei take tino taumaha. No e mihi ana kia kōrua, tēnā rā kōrua.
E mihi ana kia koutou I whakai, kia whakarongo mai kia mā.
Kia ora tātou katoa. And after those revelations, the government ordered an inquiry into the National Trust spending. A report is yet to be released.
Offshore drilling is a hot issue at the moment, but back in August, Marae Investigates broke this story when reporter Carmen Parahi travelled to Kaikoura and talked to concerned locals.
Kiuta, Kitai, from the land to the sea, Kaikoura is one of New Zealand's tourist and marine science hotspots. But there are warning signs. Beneath these world-famous waters, trouble is brewing.
Well, apart from sink their boats, we've got to stop them drilling.
We don't want them here. They can piss off, in other words.
How do I feel about it? I'm absolutely disgusted in it.
We're against deep-sea oil drilling.
Whale Watch Kaikoura wins international awards for its ecotourism work. They're upset the government has let oil and gas explorers move into their territory, putting their business and community at risk.
Where they're planning to search for oil and gas is obviously pretty much smack bang in the middle of that pathway for the whales. So obviously that does cause us concern for those whales that could in some way be impacted in terms of their ventures down here.
They could stop coming to Kaikoura?
Absolutely, it'd be devastating, devastating for this town.
An international seismic survey vessel is expected to start work in December. Sonar explosions will be used to map the seabed for hydrocarbons, indicators for oil and gas.
Can blow the eardrums, can disorientate them. Especially got deep diving whales like a giant sperm whale going down, being disorientated. If you're 2,000 metres down, you can drown.
The connection to the tohora or whales is part of the cultural identity of Ngāti Kuri, the local hapu or sub-tribe reliant on the region's abundant natural resources for food and jobs.
This is to feed us, this is to bring business here, which it has, because we're a marine tourism town. That's our playground, so we're very proud about that, and for me, it's upholding that for our next generations.
For generations, the sea has sustained this community and they're determined to protect it.
It'll be gone, all gone forever. And I want my great-grandson to be able to swim out here when I'm an old bugger sitting on the rocks and hook one for me,
Locals perceive their traditional way of life as being threatened.
If they were blown out of the water tomorrow, I wouldn't blink an eyelid, but you've got to keep within the law of things. So if the politicians will listen to a peaceful protest, so good, but if they don't, well, there's just got to be other methods. We've got to stop it.
So do you think it'll go further than just a peaceful protest?
Oh, it will. I know cousins and you know, other iwis that are quite prepared to do some pretty radical stuff. You know, it'll get quite nasty, I believe.
Anadarko's used to hostility, but it won't stop the multi-billion-dollar Texas oil company from moving ahead with its ambitious plans.
Any company that wants to come here and explore for oil and gas is going to make a very big investment up front. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And they're not going to make that unless there's something in it for them. That's the rule of business.
During summer, Anadarko will drill deep-sea exploration wells, considered the most dangerous part of any operation, off Taranaki and in the Canterbury Basin, south of Kaikoura. Anadarko also owns the rights to explore and drill up to 3 kilometres deep in the Pegasus Basin, from South Wairarapa to North Kaikoura for 5 years.
This economic zone contains potentially vast resources of hydrocarbons, and that can take many forms, oil to natural gas. So these resources, if we're able to tap into those, discover them, tap into them, could be a source of enormous wealth for New Zealand.
But many in Kaikoura believe with increased wealth is increased risk, and they're unwilling to pay the ultimate price, an environmental disaster. But that's the problem, though, isn't it? It's because Anadarko is forever linked with the biggest oil disaster in history.
Anadarko was a passive investor in that operation, so we had no people of ours on that rig.
3 years ago, Anadarko owned 25% of the Macondo exploration well that discharged nearly 5 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico for 87 days after the Deepwater Horizon rig blew up, killing 11 men. That's the biggest oil disaster in history.
It is, yes.
And Anadarko was a part of it.
We were a part owner of that facility, yes. We were not operating it. We had no people on it. We had no say in how that was operated.
The company paid $4 billion to BP, its majority partner in the well, to settle its share of clean-up costs.
You know, there's a financial liability that's quite a different thing from responsibility for it.
Why should New Zealand trust Anadarko?
Anadarko, as an operator, has a track record of no serious incidents in any of its deep water drilling operations. We have our own set of standards. A country has its own set of standards. The industry has, industry best practice. We will implement whatever of those standards is the highest. So yes, there's risk, but there are things you can do to mitigate risk.
He's accusing activists of using the Gulf of Mexico disaster to stir up trouble in Kaikoura between locals, Anadarko and the government.
Anadarko's coming in just 6 months.
Anadarko's coming in just 6 months.
Do we want those ugly punks?
Do we want those ugly punks?
No drill, no spill.
No drill, no spill.
Because we want to stop oil drilling and it's going to threaten our sea. I like looking at the whales and the dolphins, and then we might not have that when they drill.
It is the children's passion, and yes, we've gone further than maybe you would in a normal learning environment, but we do inquiry at suburban school and the children lead 5 weeks of their learning, and that's where it took us.
No drill, no spill!
Children need to be taught how to think, how to weigh up all sides of an issue. I guess what I'm observing there is that those kids seem to be influenced, and I think that's sad.
Well, we came down and spoke at their school some months ago, and then since then we've been having this rap battle over the internet.
Mike Smith is a battle-hardened Greenpeace activist. He's been invited by the community to discuss his views on oil and gas mining.
A lot of people throw their hands up in situations like this and say, well, there's nothing you can do about it. But there's plenty you can do about it, and if people act together in unity right across the community, Māori, Pākehā, Kaumātua, Rangatahi, everybody, well then you can win these battles.
Mike's planning a protest flotilla with locals to travel from Kaikoura to Wellington in October. Would Whale Watch consider joining a protest flotilla?
I wouldn't rule it out.
Controversially, the government recently changed the law to stop protesters from interfering with oil companies working at sea, referred to as the Anadarko Amendment by opponents.
There is no problem with people staying outside that 500-metre zone and waving their signs and shouting their slogans. Go for it. But it's a safety issue.
I'd be prepared to go to jail for 12 months if that meant protecting, this pristine, beautiful environment.
We've spoken to the police about what our concerns are, and we've basically highlighted what we see as the safety risk. It's not something that the police have been familiar with. So it's been incumbent on us to go and give the police information about exactly what's at stake here.
It's a difficult path to traverse for Sir Mark Solomon. He must help his people progress, but also protect their traditions.
We've had our talks with Anadarko, we'll continue our talks with Anadarko. We will continue putting through submissions to the government as they are putting these new policies in place.
Earlier this year, Anadarko and government officials were invited to Takahanga Marae to talk with the community, and they're expected to return in September.
I suppose we're like the rest of New Zealand. We have some that are very frightened of the concept of drilling for oil and gas, others that see that it's an economic boon. But what we wanted was to get as much information first so we could make an informed decision.
The Pegasus Basin exploration has coincided with plans to create a Kaikoura Marine Reserve, a strategy many local groups have been working on together for 7 years. Sir Mark has grave concerns New Zealand is at risk.
We're opposed. We're not opposed against Anadarko, but we do not believe that our government has in place the environmental protection mechanisms that could deal with a spill. We also don't believe that our nation could deal with a major spill economically.
Could Anadarko cope with a disaster?
Worst case scenario, there is specialised equipment that is held in strategic locations around the world that can be called upon.
How long will that take?
Look, it takes time. There's no getting around that. It would take up to maybe 14 days to mobilise a capping stack here.
It is a beautiful place. It's the reason why Kuya Dacia Solomon believes deep-sea oil drilling is a threat.
I hate them. Can't stand them. They need to keep out of our country, off our shores, and stay where they are. We're clean. We like to be clean and green, but they seem to go around stirring it up, mucking up for all the indigenous people, then move.
Sir Mark Solomon believes the government needs to do more to protect Kaikoura.
At this state, New Zealand government, it is nowhere near good enough for us to give any form of support. That's a huge ecosystem that oil could destroy.
So joining me now is reporter Carmen Parahi. Tēnā koe, Carmen. So Anadarko has been coming under intense pressure from anti-oiling groups. What's been happening at the moment?
Well, they're drilling test wells just off the coast of Raglan. It's really upset the locals. It's been in the news a lot lately. So there is Greenpeace is there, as well as anti-drilling opponents. But what it has done, it's actually created a public awareness about this issue. So there's a lot more talk about oil exploration in New Zealand.
And what about the Kaikoura community? What's been happening with them since you were there in August?
Well, they've been busy, actually, still. They welcomed the people that headed up to Raglan. They stopped off in Kaikoura from the South Island. They stopped off in Kaikoura. So they were warmly welcomed and received by the people of Kaikoura. They've had a couple of public meetings, a couple of hui, which about oil exploration in New Zealand, and a lot of bureaucrats and politicians turned up to talk to them about it. It's fair to say they left those two meetings, they haven't changed their mind.
They haven't changed their mind?
No, they don't want exploration or any sort of drilling off their coast.
Pretty much what most of the communities around New Zealand are saying, aren't they? Don't want the drilling?
Yeah. Well.
Thank you very much for that update. Appreciate it. Tēnā koe.
Well, that's it from us for now. Thanks for joining us.
No hora mai rā, I raro i ngā manaakitanga o te wā.
He mea tautoko nā te maanga.